Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to COVID Calls. I'm your host, Chris Perugine, and today I'll be joined by some very, very interesting guests. Our special guest for today is Farrugia. He's the CEO of Malta Enterprise, and we'll be speaking to him about some of the measures that were launched, I believe, today as well. So, hi, Kurt. Hope you're seeing me okay, and we'll get to ask you a few questions first. But I also want to introduce the other guests that we have on the show today. So we have Roberta Libre from Weave Consulting, who is essentially an advisor to businesses on CSR and other matters, so corporate social responsibility. So we'll be asking her about whether CSR is still happening today in the midst of the Corona crisis and how it's changing. And we also have Alex Dreyfus from Chili's, an expert in blockchain and entrepreneurship and the gaming sector. So I want to kind of get a sense of how he's experiencing this whole crisis as well. So thank you, Roberta. Thank you, Alex, for being with us. We'll bring you on the show soon, but I just want to start with Kurt. Kurt, first of all, how are you dealing with the inundation of calls you must be receiving as head of Malta Enterprise in this time?
I think that we managed to basically process and get up to scratch with the massive amounts of requests quite smoothly. So in the past few hours,
have you had?
Sorry?
How many requests have you had so far?
So today we had over 2,200 applications just for the weight supplement. That would mean up to 6,500 employees who we are assisting through the supplement scheme, to the weight supplement, COVID weight supplement scheme. Basically, we launched this morning at around 9 a.m. with the application. And we have 2,262 applications in the past hours. So basically, these are businesses who are applying to get a wage subsidy on their employees.
So there is some controversy around this subsidy, obviously, as there always would be with such a scheme. So one of the issues is there are many companies that are suffering from the current situation, but don't fall within the categories of Annex A or Annex B. Perhaps they were registered wrongly in the NACE code, or perhaps they were forgotten by this list, but are being seriously affected anyway. What do you tell these businesses?
So first of all they have to do is to put in their VAT number. So we're not asking for the NACE code, but if you put in the VAT number, the NACE code will be recognized by basically what the VAT records say.
And when you say put it in where? On the website?
On the website, covid19.maltaenterprise.com. And there's, under initiatives, there's the COVID wage supplement tab, and there's the application there. And the second point is basically the annexes are not exclusive or exhaustive. We tried to group in even after the Prime Minister announced the schemes, we tried to gather as much feedback as possible to ensure that in both annexes we reach all businesses. But as I said, they're not exclusive. So in the application, any business that is not included can basically say that it does not agree with the category that they fall in, and they apply manually through the same application, and then there's an evaluation process that is done by Malta Enterprise. So at that point, we evaluate each and every application that comes in.
So to an extent, there is a sort of one-to-one or case-by-case basis evaluation. So we're not going to end up with a situation where a business that doesn't need the supplement because they somehow are still operating will benefit from it, but a business that definitely needs it is not going to get it, right?
No, not at all, because we'll be asking for proof that their operations have been hit or completely shut down because of any government intervention due to the current medical issues that are surrounding the COVID
crisis. What do you
crisis.
call it? I don't think there's a word big enough to explain what's happening. On this note, is it fair to say, or rather, which are the companies you're helping first? Is it are they the companies that have been forced to be closed down completely, or are they companies like, let's say, big employers who, as a result of all this, have lost substantial amounts of business?
So first of all, it's not a first come, first serve. All companies that apply will be analyzed and evaluated according to their own current situation. But of course, will be, and we are discussing also the situation of larger employers. And those are typically their manufacturing companies. That would be, first of all, we keep tabs with all of them on a regular basis, not just during the crisis, but even throughout the year. Of course, as you would imagine, current circumstances, we'd be on the phone with them almost every day in, day out. And we'll ask what the situation is. Some of them are finding that supply chains are being cut because what's happening in other countries where factories are closing down. Some of them who are basically working just fine, but they come to send their products and they find that the factories elsewhere are closed down. So we're finding all these difficulties. Okay. And we feel that in the next few days and weeks, the manufacturing might be feeling the pinch as much as other business. And
it is a bit of a chain reaction, right?
Exactly. It's a global challenge, and we don't live in a bubble. We're very much affected by whatever happens elsewhere, from China to the US to Africa.
Alex, if I can just bring you in to explain, so what is the situation for gaming companies today? I know that many gaming companies depend on sportsbook. I believe so does your company depend on the sports kind of world. How are you guys dealing, especially because when it comes to gaming companies and these sort of businesses, the salaries that you pay are nowhere near the minimum wage supplement being offered, right? So to an extent, surely these measures don't really save businesses like yours, right? How are you seeing this?
Yeah, so for us, just a quick introduction. We are Chili's or Socios.com here in Malta. I've been myself in Malta for 15 years, our industry is in the blockchain crypto space, but it's mainly the sports industry. And as you said, and as everybody knows, there is no more matches and sports events right now. You cannot watch the Champions League, you cannot support Juventus, and you cannot support Manchester United, which is also a relief in Malta, I believe. But the reality is, because there is no sports betting for the gaming businesses, it means there is no betting. And if there is no betting, there is no revenue. You have all these gaming companies that have like 80 or 90% of their revenue that vanished. It's not due to the government. Nobody can blame Malta government because the Juventus cannot play. So it's a bit of a balance between finding how this company can survive and knowing that they are unlikely to request any help from the government because it's not connected to the government. So for us, we have 60 employees here in Malta. We're not going to ask any help from the government. So hopefully we will go through in the next few months because luckily enough, we have treasury and we raised money 2 years ago as a venture. So we are privileged in that space, but yet every employee is working from home, which is painful. And also
in a second, I thought you'd like working from home, but you have some questions about it. But we'll do that in a second. I just want to ask Roberta from this perspective as well, so we could sort of close a bit the more enterprise chapter as well. I'm curious as to what kind of effect your type of business is having, and whether you're seeing the effect of on other types of businesses.
Currently, I can't say that I'm feeling the effect immediately, in the sense that obviously the work that I'm doing has been sort of arranged and coming. It's not immediate. It's been planned for a few weeks or months, but I am also anticipating that things might halt in the coming weeks. And I'm also getting a sense from my clients that they're a little bit less quick to respond, obviously also because they have other more pressing priorities. And this is a sentiment that I think is felt across all those B2B service providers. So at face value, we are not hit immediately, but obviously we serve other businesses. So if those businesses are struggling, we will eventually be impacted as well. Then beyond my own work, my advisory work, I am also in touch with a number of other peers. For example, a number of lawyers who are litigation lawyers, who have been strongly impacted because courts are closed at the moment. And as far as I know, they are not included in the list of beneficiaries of the support.
So let's ask that question to Kurt. Kurt, so people who are, for example, lawyers, the courts are now shut down. Effectively, they can't do their business, right? Can they also apply under Annex A or Annex B of the Malta Enterprise schemes?
They can apply and they'd be evaluated, but at the moment they're not part of either Annex A or Annex B, and basically government did not shut down any work for lawyers. The court is shut down, but the firm, so to speak, can still work on other issues.
But you're not only helping businesses whose business has been shut down, right? You're helping businesses whose work has slowed or reduced, right? So lawyers still don't feature. What about real estate agents?
Real estate agents are not part of the scheme for the moment.
And what do you tell these people? So people who are hearing today, and maybe they're lawyers or maybe they're real estate agents, and maybe they're worried that their business is suffering in a great way and they cannot apply. What do you tell them? Do you tell them that this might change in the future, as we've already seen some revisions in terms of the schemes, or is it just each man to his own at this stage?
For sure. So government has been upscaling the amount of assistance that it's giving, and I'm sure that even from Malta Enterprise we're giving feedback from any information that's coming in and from any discussions that we're having with different sectors. So basically we're taking the role of giving feedback to the government and basically scale the amount of assistance to different sectors. We've done that during the past week, and we intend to continue doing it as time progresses. Of course, I'd say that the first priority for government was to ensure that employees are kept in employment.
Okay.
And one would understand that there are priorities at the moment. There are businesses that have been basically shut down because of the medical situation and the COVID situation. So they were given priority first. I'm sure that as time progresses, as I was talking earlier about the manufacturing sector, there will be a time where government will have to open up even more if it feels it is necessary.
Okay, Alex, I just want to get your perspective. So you said your business isn't particularly affected because you've got your investors and you're that kind of startup, so to speak. But I do want to know, you've been in entrepreneurship for at least 15 years, if not much longer than that, you'll correct me. But I want to know, what's your advice? So to employers who are currently thinking, should I sack half my staff? Should I get them on a reduced wage bill? What can I do to survive this crisis, which we don't really know how long it's going to last for?
That's a tough one, and I will probably be hated saying what I think in that case. But at this point, the priority of an entrepreneur is to make sure that his company, whatever it is, survive. It is a last longer game. You need to ensure. I mean, I'm a former. I used to work in the poker business, so I'm going to talk as a poker player. You need to last long. You need to ensure you have enough chips to play the game till it ends. And in that particular situation, which is very tough, some companies going to have to lay off. It's heartbreaking. I've done that in my life. It's difficult. Most of employees or family, and I'm not talking for us. Huh? It doesn't affect us, as I said. But most of employees of any companies are always either friends or family. But you may gonna have situation that to survive, you need to reduce your exposure financially, and then you will grow again. And the government, in all fairness, and I'm completely apolitical, is doing a great job in supporting companies for that. But as an entrepreneur, which will luckily, and I'm very lucky, we will not have we don't have any need to request anything from the government. But as an entrepreneur, you need to do everything you can to survive that crisis. Because if your company disappears, then you not only you lose everything as an individual, because entrepreneurs are the less protected when something wrong happens, and the secondly, you cannot build again. So it is very tough. You have to choose between usually two of the worst situation, but yet you have to make a choice, and that's the difficult part.
Robert, as someone who deals, I'll get back to you, Kate, if you have something to add there. But Robert, as someone who deals with, advising companies on being more corporate, socially responsible, right? On in many ways dealing with charity and things like that. Today we're faced with a situation where where it's almost a charitable act for an employer to retain his or her employees, right? What do you say? As in, you're a business owner yourself. Surely you can appreciate that some employers are going to have to lay staff off.
Yes. It is, as Alex said, about the survival of the organization. And unfortunately, sometimes the tough decisions have to be made. Having said that, rather than charity, I think companies who are more ethical and more socially responsible, but also more, let's say, future-oriented, will start adapting and recreating their own plans for survival in the medium to the long term. So if they can retain those employees, it makes sense even for them to retain them, because then they'll be able to bounce back quickly, perhaps more quicker than their competitors, and therefore be able to survive. Having said that, if that is not possible, I think there are ways and means how people are let go. So just because we need to let go of people, it doesn't mean that it has to be done in a way that is inhumane. So we can still support our employees by guiding them to the existing support services, also guiding them to potential alternative opportunities that there may be in the market. But ultimately, I think it boils down to being very transparent. I think the key is being honest and transparent with your people who, at the end of the day, have helped you build your business, and just saying things as they are in the most honest and genuine manner possible. I think that is key.
One of the things that, sorry, Kurt, did you want to say something earlier?
Yes, I'm just going to pick up on what Alex and Robert have been saying. First of all, the government is primarily focused on trying to retain as many employees on the books of the employer. So the assistance is directed for that. But even then, government has its own budgets. And at the moment, you hear announcements by governments, grandiose announcements of multi-billion packages. But, at the end of the day, you have every government has a budget. Of course, you can get as much loans as possible. But at the end of the day, there's a limit. So that's why
Sorry, Kate, I don't want to be too political, but obviously your previous role was the PR of the previous Prime Minister Joseph Muscat. So surely, okay, every country has a budget, but it wasn't your message for many years that the Maltese government has done its finances as well as possible and has a good amount of money to use for moments of crisis? Or are you now saying that there isn't that much money after all?
No, I'm not going to be political at all, but we wouldn't have survived, and government wouldn't have been in a position to announce such big measures had our finances not been in a sound state. So we can sustain a package of 12% of liquidity and 1.6% in direct injection for the next 3 months, and possibly roll over that for the next 3 months and the 3 months after, because our finances are in a sound state.
How long can they last? Do you have any idea? Like how long are you?
That is the biggest question that only a few politicians worldwide are trying to answer, and I don't think they're giving the right answers. So those.
But a company is aware of
it. 2 months, 2 weeks. I think that's the biggest unknown. So at the moment, the biggest issue that any government and any policymaker has is to try and predict how long will this situation prolong, because even though we open our ports, I don't think people will have enough courage or the trust that you need to have to travel to countries where are affected.
In fact, I want to bring Alex in on this, even to ask whether there is a role for blockchain in the sort of. I know it's a bit of a vague question. Blockchain is usually thrown in these sort of ways as sort of is there a solution that it's going to provide? But I think after the crisis, when as Kurt is saying, people will be allowed to travel, will be allowed to hang out again, but might not be very comfortable doing so. Do you think that there is a solution that the blockchain can provide to help that effort?
I think the main question is actually indeed not the crisis right now, but the day after. And the day after is going to be actually the real challenge, because how do you reopen things that has been closed? How do you make it safe? Are you safe? Is Chris more safe than me? Can I go out? You cannot go out. So there is a lot of trust that's going to have to be built. And all the science fiction books and movies we've read or seen, actually a little bit of that is going to happen, because you're going to have to use technology, and that's blockchain or not. Let's focus not on blockchain, but rather the technology. Technology is already helping the day after to actually identify cluster of people that are sick, cluster of people that are not sick. And at some point, and I apologize if it looks authoritarian, but it is about safety and saving life, is you're going to be, I believe we're going to be in a situation where some people will be allowed to travel, some people are going to be allowed to work, and you're going to have to use technology to ensure that you're trustable, blockchain or not. In China, for example, they use WeChat, which is the local, WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever, and you have a QR code which is green, red, and orange, depends on your status, if you have been immune or not immune, but infected or not, and depends of that, you can enter into public space. It's horrible, yes.
So you're saying, like, when we go back to watching football matches or entering stadiums, for example, you would actually be checked to see whether you are, whether you had the virus, whether you're immune for the virus, whether you haven't.
It is a bit of a stretch, of course, and I don't hope we will get there. But you cannot release 500,000 people suddenly like nothing happened. And again, in Malta, we are blessed. We are an island. I mean, I'm French, obviously, with this accent. If you haven't guessed it yet, you should change your something. But in France, it's much more worse. And my family is in a real lockdown. In Malta, we are not in a complete house arrest. It's much better. And also, as much as you go on Malta airport to see the departure and arrival, you have literally 0 flight or 3 flights just for safety reasons. So we are protected because of that. So we are in a good position. But as Kurt said as well, is when I'm going to be able to go in Italy or to go in Asia? In my case, I spend like 80% of my time in Asia. It's not soon. And if I go there, will I be able to come back here? At what cost? And everything's going to change. And I think the crisis in short term is scary, but it's also a source of opportunity on how to live better in the next generation and in the next year. But
so I want to talk a bit about that. You said you hate remote working, first of all. I want to know why, because I imagined you'd be the sort of person who would enjoy remote working.
I mean, I don't know if it was for me. Me, I hate remote working because I'm an old school guy. Even though I'm a geek, a computer, and I work in the blockchain and crypto space, I love when the team is next to me and I can shout at them and they can scream at me. So there is this interaction. Having said so, again, we are very lucky today in 2020. The technology, look at us today. We are at 4 different locations and it works perfectly. So again,
Robert, if I can ask you, what do you make? Like, how are you dealing with remote working? First of all, I imagine you were doing that anyway yourself as you. And are you seeing any positives from this crisis, or any things that we should be keeping after this crisis, the day after this crisis ends?
Yes. As you said, I was used to working remotely myself, also being a parent and being able to juggle work and family. However, not exclusively, obviously. So
now you have a lot more people at home.
That's a big challenge. So working remotely by yourself is one thing. Having a family here and needing to do, all the schoolwork and all the studying and everything, that's a big challenge. So yes, I think the key takeaway here is balance. So I was a big advocate of remote working and something that I used to recommend very much as well to a number of my clients, especially as a means to help address the climate crisis. So that was my primary motivation. And now we're seeing that we can actually do it. It's doable.
So you used to advise clients to try remote working.
Yes.
They resisted it because of a million and one other.
There's a bit of hesitation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then suddenly, I mean, it's interesting. Like I experienced that a bit myself. At Lovin Malta, we had already started to implement remote working once a week, mostly for working mothers and people who might find that flexibility easier. But when we were forced to do that in its entirety, in fact, this is the office. I'm here today because my internet at home wasn't working, but there's no one else here. Everyone's working remotely, and I feel that the productivity has really increased. I feel that there's so much less waste of time in terms of going to meetings. Travel time. There's when you're meeting someone online as well, you kind of waste less time in a sense. So there are all of these issues, and you were talking about some of the benefits. I was speaking to Alex before about some of the lessons that we should learn as well in terms of things that we should retain from this crisis, right? Like you mentioned, Alex, before, electronic signatures. Tell us a bit about
yes.
sort of things.
Well, just as a joke, there is one thing that I discovered thanks to the lockdown-ish. In Schéma, there are birds, actually, and they are very loud when there is not too much traffic and people. So that's a good thing.
Okay.
No, more seriously, on the identity, it goes back to what I was saying is either for voting or for entering into a public place, technology and therefore identity and certification of that identity is going to be key either this year, next year, doesn't matter, but we're going to have to use the technology that is available to ensure that you, me, are safe because by definition, we do not trust our neighbor. And as much as we have to trust the government, it's not enough. So the technology is going to help, hopefully, for that.
And there are some things like, if you're going to sign a contract, maybe we could start learning
Yes.
things electronically.
I was joking with, with a minister. I was asking, hey, maybe it's the right time, guys, to make Malta, because in Malta, what people don't necessarily know is electronic signature are not recognized. Still used, but not legally recognized. So it is literally the thing that is probably going to be an outcome of this crisis as well. Is we're going to be able to use DocuSign legally for a court case, hopefully.
Yeah.
There's another change.
Okay, go for it.
Basically, it takes you 5 minutes to go from Seizei to Pieta, to my work, and 10 minutes to connect to one of the apps for a meeting. So
there is that waste of time before Zoom and Skype. They never work when you need them to, right? Kurt, I'd like to get a sense from you about what this could have meant if Malta was going through an election. Obviously, as I said before, in your previous job, you were very familiar with election campaigns. We currently don't have an election campaign planned anytime soon. But what if we did? Is this something that would have been postponed? Do you think? And are there any? Is this the time for us to think about other things like online voting, for example, and being able to preempt those sort of changes?
First of all, the world and everything we're going through is so unpredictable that it's almost impossible to be predicting any elections or outcomes or what would have happened if there's an election now. But there's an election in the US in November, and we can see what will happen by then, because that's in a few months' time, and it's a good test to be looking at. When it comes to online voting and these so to speak experiments, I think it's time to be testing, just in case we'd be living under pandemics in different eras and times. But yes, that's part of a changing world and part of why we should be taking stock of what's happening now. For the past week, we've been discussing at work how unpredictable this was and how no one could have predicted what we're going through at the moment. But it's also time to start thinking of similar situations, not just with regards to pandemics, but there are other situations that might come out of nowhere, and certain procedures, certain processes, working from home, they will become part of our daily lives.
Roberta, Kurt is mentioning other things that could happen. I'm sure you can think of one that is happening already, right?
Yes, in fact, we already had a crisis, which didn't come on us suddenly, so maybe we weren't really looking at it as a crisis, but the climate situation was getting critical. So I really hope that once this is over, we take away the lessons that we've learned from dealing with the pandemic and apply those new ways of doing things to be able to mitigate the climate crisis, because it's going to hit us as well. So this also gave us a taste of things that will come unless we start taking climate change as something serious. So in a way...
And maybe a new aspect of your consulting business should be getting ready for these unpredictable crises. That's how do you prepare your company for that?
Yes, it's part of being resilient. I think companies that are responsible towards their stakeholders, including their employees, their clients, and also their shareholders, need to build resilience. And
Yes.
that of resilience boils down to having the soft skills to be able to deal with situations and manage change.
Kurt, you were going to say something? I've got a few other questions for you. Go ahead.
Sure, but I think the most important thing at the moment, first of all, what we've been discussing up until now are containment measures, basically for people not to end up unemployed. But I think the thinking that we should be doing at this moment after this period is on how to restart the economy, and that is where our role as Malta Enterprise will kick in on being proactive and
What are the sectors you see most opportunity in, Kurt? As head of Malta Enterprise, surely you could give some advice to business owners as to the direction they should be taking to help kickstart the economy.
First of all, at the moment, everyone should be looking at their working practices and their working processes to ensure that once we are over this current scenario, they can be in a position to be first off the blocks to be able to market, to bring in clients, and ensure that they are future ready. And secondly, from a government and policy perspective, we should be thinking on how to ensure that all the schemes are directed at new investment, at reshoring, at asking companies to set up in Malta because we're one of the safest islands to be doing business in. So these are all things that the Malta Enterprise team will be thinking about in the next few weeks. Hopefully, this will not take months. But I think once we are over the medical crisis, we need to be first of the blocks, not just as individual businesses, but as a country.
And do you see any particular sort of industries that we've been sort of missing out on so far that we should get back into, or is it things like AI, virtual reality, gaming? Is it in that direction still, or is it?
No, I'm sure that the countries that are more advanced when it comes to AI, to big data, to research and development will be the strongest after this current situation. We go through this current situation, and we're in a good stage. I think we should be even more proactive when it comes to promoting and assisting companies that are future ready.
So do you think Malta Enterprise will eventually release schemes to help businesses start up as opposed to just contain them?
For sure, we're already discussing such scenarios, and it's something that we already have. We have very strong training and retraining scheme for development. That's something that should be availed of as soon as possible, and as a way of restarting the economy.
Yeah, I just have a couple of quick fire questions, especially that we received from the comments. So first of all, one question is, how long will the evaluation process take, or how long should people expect their application process for these schemes to take?
So we expect a couple of days from when they come in. As I already told you, we have over 2,000 applications just today. And then it would take a few days to process the payment. We're talking about thousands and thousands of employees. So we think that by mid-April, we'd be in a position to be processing and paying employers to pay their employees.
Okay. What do you say to people who say, I'm ashamed of being Maltese, I've been paying taxes my whole life, and yet now you're leaving me in the cold? People like you mentioned before, real estate agents, lawyers, or other people who might be hit by this crisis but are not featured in the schemes.
We're listening, and we're getting feedback as time passes. Hopefully, we'll be in a position to assist other sectors. What I think is that certain sectors who that have been doing a lot of business in the past months and years should be resilient for a few weeks. But if not, we're here to listen, and we're listening, and we'll be giving our feedback to government policymakers to ensure that we assist as best as we can.
Another question about the salaries that the Prime Minister gave up a month of his salary, so that the Minister of the Economy and Tourism. Is this something you personally are considering, or other people in the civil service who have pretty decent paychecks yourselves.
Yes, Chris, I've already spoken to the management at Malta Enterprise and asked for a cut in my own salary, but it's not something that I enjoy talking about. That's something I'm doing out of my own will. I wouldn't have mentioned it had you not asked. And I've been doing that before by, in different means. So I gave part of my March salary as a donation, and I will definitely take a cut. Ideally, it's part of a government initiative.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Roberta and Alex, I just want to get like a concluding comment from you guys and whether you also have any questions for Kurt before we wrap up. We'll start with you, Roberta.
Yes, to Kurt, maybe a suggestion, because there are already a number of schemes which have been around for a couple of years, maybe looking at the criteria and adapting them a bit to make them more accessible to people. So maybe perhaps the co-financing requirements and even the time it takes to assess certain applications. So that's just a little bit of a suggestion. Just an idea which might be a little bit more radical, is I think this whole situation has made us revisit how we live and how we work. And perhaps we should start looking at measuring success, not in terms of GDP, but in terms of well-being. So that's my final thought. So to speak.
Super. Alex?
It will be, I guess, a different angle. Of course, I agree with Roberta anyway. It's more like I wish good luck to the government, because when you are actually government and all the entities around that, because when they are trying to get elected, it's probably not to handle a crisis like this. Nobody is trained for that. And in any case, not only people will make mistakes, and we have to acknowledge that people will make mistakes, and we have to acknowledge the fact that nobody was prepared for that, so they will be judged as well. But we should not judge now anything. And we should be apolitical as much as we can, because we are all in the same boat. In that case, we are all in the same island. Yeah, just listen to the government. It's not that because something is written on the internet that it makes you a doctor as well. So we have the people who need to really try to separate the fake news and the real information. And on Facebook, as you know, Chris, there is a lot of pop-up of content that are fake, and it's very annoying. And I see people reposting that. So yeah, again, let's just make sure that we know that in Malta, we are very lucky. It's going to be tough, but we are very lucky in comparison of other countries.
Thank you very, very much, Alex. So I just want to get the concluding remark from Kurt. Maybe you want to respond to what Roberta said as well.
So for sure, we're thinking of new schemes, but we have current schemes such as the startup schemes that are very, very good schemes. I'm sure that part of the relaunching of the economy, a very important part will be startups. And of course, it will boil down in a few weeks' time to bread and butter issues again. So yes, of course, we've been working hard as government, as Malta Enterprise, to ensure that any business that is incentivized is, looking at the environment, at social issues. But I'm sure that the next few weeks will be tough, will be assisting people to find jobs. Of course, taking into consideration completely different economic scenario than we've been living in the past years. And for sure, part of the well-being and a different way of looking at economic growth must be part of how we are going to reshape the economy for the next years. And all suggestions are being listened to. So Alex, it's not just people listening to government, but I think at this point in time, it's more important that government listens to people and businesses. Our role is, of course, businesses, but more crucially is to ensure that the well-being of all the population is being taken care of.
A last cheeky question from me, Kurt.
Another one.
Last one. How would Joseph Muscat have handled this crisis differently to Robert Abela, would you reckon?
I wouldn't go into such comparison. I think that it's government building on whatever has been achieved in the past. I wouldn't say 7 years. I would say 15 years.
Okay. So, guys, thank you very, very much for being with us on COVID calls. We'll be back again tomorrow. We have Owen Bonici, the Minister of Education, who's going to be joining our calls, and a couple of other people speaking about the education sector. If you have any suggestions, questions, recommendations, you've got my email address in this video, and feel free to get in touch on Facebook as well. Thank you very much again to our guests, Kurt Farrugia, CEO of Enterprise, Roberta Libre, Managing Director of Weave Consulting, and Alex Dreyfus, founder of Chili's.com. Thank you very much, and we'll be with you again on COVID Calls.
Thank you.